This is really an interesting one, I think. I mean, so I don't know what God's doing here exactly, but he's helping ignite the sacrificial flame. And that's kind of an interesting idea, I think, because, let's say that you have an impulse to make a sacrifice. You think, well, I should change this about my life. Well, it's like, where does that come from, that impulse? It manifests itself out of nothing. Or you came up with it. Well, you might want to stop thinking about it, thinking so surely that you come up with your own thoughts. You don't come up with your damn dreams, do you? They just happen. God only knows where they come from. They come from your brain. Oh boy, that's a sophisticated answer. They come from your unconscious. Well, that's not much better. At least it's somewhat better. But there are those amazing dramas take place in the theater of your imagination at night. You don't even understand what they are, and yet they occur night after night. And those things, dreams, they can contain wisdom. It just staggers the person who has the dream once they get the key to the dream, once they remember it. It's like, oh, look, you just revealed a bunch of wisdom to yourself that you didn't know. Well, where'd that come from? Well, you don't know. How in the world can you dream up things that you don't know? That's a tough one. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point, because there are some reasonable things that can be said about that. But, the idea that there's something that's not you. Jung would call it the self. Carl Jung would call it the self, which he thought of as the totality of your being across time and space. It's something like that. And that, each second that you exist is a slice of the self manifesting itself across time and space. And he thought of the self as partly the voice of conscience, whatever that is, that helps guide you when you have to make a difficult decision. And a difficult decision might be, well, what do I need to sacrifice? How do I need to discipline myself, right? What do I need to forego? Well, how do you figure those things out? Well, this picture is trying to put forth the idea that perhaps if you had established the proper relationship with God the Father, then he would help figure out how to get the sacrificial fires burning so that you could stay in a proper relationship with him across time. Well, if that's such an unreasonable proposition, what's the alternative proposition? Thank God things aren't worse for me than they are. And you should be grateful about that, because they can be a lot worse than they are, man. They can be so bad. And inquiring would be, well, I don't really know how I can make it better, but I'm open to suggestions, man. If I can figure out how to do it, I'll try it. That's the humility and the inquiry. That's a humble inquiry. How could I make things better? It's something like that. And that's like, what sacrifices do I need to make in order to make things better? That's a good question to ask yourself. You could ask yourself that every morning. What sacrifice do I have to make things better? You can decide what constitutes better. How about that? Then it's not even as if it's being imposed on you. Come up with your own notion of what constitutes better. And so you could ask yourself, well, how I have this day that lays itself out in front of me. What thing could I let go of that's impeding my progress, that if I let go of would make my life better, my family's life better, my culture's life better, my being better? And then that would give you something to do for the day, wouldn't it? And to justify your miserable life. Because you need that. That's the whole point of the first story of Adam and Eve. What do you have? A miserable life. Okay. What am I going to do about that? Well, if you just have a miserable life, you're just going to suffer stupidly and get bitter about it. That's what happens to Cain. It's like, well, how about not doing that? Because that seems to just take a bad deal and make it worse. How about making a sacrifice and seeing if you can please God and put being on track? God, that'd be something to do. What could be better than that? What could possibly be better than that? Well, that's why it's archetypal, man, because nothing's better than that. That's where it tops out. So when you can do that, you can do that every day. You'd have to do it in a little way, because, like, well, what good are you, You're not going to go and bring the socialist utopia into being in one fell swoop.